The first time Sarah Martinez heard the angry buzzing overhead, she thought it was just another horse fleece circling the cattle feed. She was wrong. Dead wrong. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when the sleek white drone first appeared above Sunset Ridge Ranch, hovering like a mechanical vulture over the pasture where her family had raised cattle for 3 generations. Sarah shielded her eyes against the Texas sun, watching the device circle their property with the persistence of a tax collector. "Dad, you seeing this?" She called to her father, Miguel, who was mending fence posts near the barn. Miguel straightened his weathered back and squinted at the sky. At 62, he'd seen plenty of strange things drift over their 200-acre spread, but never anything quite like this. The drone wasn't the cheap plastic kind kids flew in the park. This was expensive equipment, complete with a high-definition camera that seemed to be recording everything. "What the hell is that thing doing?" Miguel muttered, setting down his hammer. The drone performed another lazy circle, its camera gimbal rotating to capture different angles of their property. It lingered over the cattle pens, swept across the main house where Sarah's mother Rosa was hanging laundry, and even hovered near the equipment shed where they stored their John Deere tractor. "Should we call the sheriff?" Sarah asked, though she already knew what Deputy Johnson would say. Airspace laws were murky at best, and unless someone was clearly breaking the law, there wasn't much local law enforcement could do about a nosy neighbor with expensive toys. The drone made one final pass, its camera lens seeming to focus directly on Sarah before it disappeared beyond the tree line that bordered their eastern property boundary. The sudden silence felt almost oppressive after 20 minutes of mechanical buzzing. "Probably just some kid playing around," Miguel said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it himself. Over the next week, the drone returned daily, always around the same time, always following the same pattern. It would appear from the east, methodically survey a property, and disappear back toward the cluster of new mansions that had sprouted up on what used to be the Johnson farm. The timing wasn't random, Sarah realized. The drone showed up during their busiest hours, when they were feeding cattle, when Rosa was in the garden, when Sarah was training her new quarter horse in the round pen. Someone was studying their routines. "This isn't some kid," Sarah told her parents over dinner on Friday night. "Whoever's flying that thing knows exactly what they're doing. They're watching us." Rosa, a woman who'd raised 4 children and survived 2 tornadoes, wasn't easily rattled. But the constant surveillance was getting under her skin. "I can't even hang clothes without feeling like I'm being watched," she said, stabbing her fork into her mashed potatoes with more force than necessary. Miguel reached for his coffee, his callous hands steady despite his growing irritation. "Tomorrow's Saturday. If that thing shows up again, I'm following it home. Time we found out who's so interested in our business." As if summoned by his words, the familiar buzzing sound drifted through the kitchen window. All 3 family members rushed to the back porch, where they watched the white drone perform its usual reconnaissance mission. But this time, something was different. The drone descended lower than usual, hovering just 50 feet above their property. Through the kitchen window, they could see its camera rotating, zooming in on their faces as they stood on the porch. The message was clear. Whoever was controlling this device wanted them to know they were being watched. That's when Sarah noticed the small decal on the drone's side, a bright pink sticker that looked suspiciously like the live, laugh, love decals she'd seen plastered on certain vehicles around town. The same vehicles owned by the woman who'd been making their lives miserable at every town council meeting for the past 6 months, Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed neighborhood watch coordinator who'd moved to the rural community from the city and immediately began crusading to improve property values and eliminate what she called unsightly agricultural eyesores. "I should have known," Sarah whispered, watching the drone finally retreat toward the McMansion subdivision. Karen Whitfield had just declared war on the wrong ranch family. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made ranch work almost pleasant, but the Martinez family's mood was anything but peaceful. Miguel had spent the night researching drone laws on his ancient laptop, while Sarah had been scrolling through social media, discovering just how deep Karen Whitfield's complaints about their ranch went. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing her parents a post from the Millbrook Meadows Homeowners Association Facebook page. Karen had shared a blurry photo of their cattle pen with the caption, "Unsanitary conditions right next to our beautiful community. When will the county do something about this health hazard?" The post had 17 angry face reactions and comments like, "Disgusting," and "Property values are plummeting because of places like this." Rose's face flushed red as she read over Sarah's shoulder. "Health hazard? We've been raising cattle here since before that woman was born. We've never had a single violation from the health department." Miguel closed his laptop with more force than necessary. Time to pay Mrs. Whitfield a visit. The drive to Millbrook Meadows took only 10 minutes, but it felt like entering a different world, where Sunset Ridge Ranch sprawled across rolling hills dotted with oak trees and split-rail fences. Karen's neighborhood featured identical 2-story houses with manicured lawns and matching mailboxes. Every yard looked like it had been measured with a ruler and trimmed with nail scissors. They found Karen Whitfield's house easily enough. It was the one with a neighborhood watch coordinator sign in the front yard and security cameras pointed in every direction. Her white Escalade sat in the driveway, and sure enough, there was a live, laugh, love decal on the rear window. Karen answered the door wearing a velour tracksuit and an expression that could curdle milk. She was exactly what Sarah had expected: blonde highlights, too much makeup for a Saturday morning, and the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Can I help you?" Karen asked, though her tone suggested she had no intention of helping anyone. "We're the Martinez family from Sunset Ridge Ranch," Miguel said, keeping his voice level. "We need to talk about your drone." Karen's fake smile widened. "I'm sorry, what drone? I think you're confused." "The one that's been flying over our property every day this week," Sarah said. "The one with the pink sticker that matches your car." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Karen replied, but her eyes darted toward the garage. "And even if I did have a drone, which I don't, there's nothing illegal about flying in public airspace." Miguel stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, photographing people on their private property without permission is illegal in Texas. So is using those photos for harassment, which is what you're doing on social media." Karen's demeanor shifted instantly. Gone was the fake politeness, replaced by the sharp edge of someone used to getting her way through intimidation. "Are you threatening me? Because you know that I'm very well connected in this community. I know people at the county commissioner's office, the zoning department, and the sheriff's department." "We're not threatening anyone," Sarah said. "We're asking you nicely to stop flying over our property." "Your property?" Karen laughed to sound like fingernails on chalkboard. "That eyesore shouldn't even be zoned residential. Do you know what it's doing to our property values? We pay good money to live in a nice neighborhood, not next to some backward farm with smelly animals and rusty equipment." Rosa, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades dealing with difficult people. "Mrs. Whitfield, our family has been on that land for 60 years. We were there before this subdivision existed, before the road was even paved. We have every right to raise cattle on agricultural land." Karen's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Not if I have anything to say about it. You people think you can just do whatever you want, but times are changing. This community is growing up, and there's no place for your kind of operation anymore." The way she said "your kind" made Sarah's blood boil, but Miguel placed a warning hand on her arm. "We've said what we came to say," Miguel told Karen. "Stop the drone surveillance and we'll leave you alone." "Or what?" Karen challenged. "You'll call the sheriff? Good luck with that. Deputy Martinez." "Oh wait, that's your name too, isn't it? He can't do anything about legal drone flights. And when my footage shows all the violations happening on your property, the county will shut you down permanently." She slammed the door in their faces, but not before they heard her shout, "Welcome to the 21st century, farm people." As they walked back to their truck, Sarah's hands were shaking with anger. "Did you hear how she said you're kind? What does that even mean?" "It means we're dealing with more than just a nosy neighbor," Miguel said grimly. "She's not going to stop with the drone. She's going to make this personal." Rosa was already pulling out her phone. "Then we better document everything. If Karen Whitfield wants a war, she's going to get one, but we're going to fight it the right way." As they drove home, the white drone was already circling their property again, this time flying lower and more aggressively than ever before. Karen's message was clear. The Martinez family's polite request had only made her more determined to drive them out. What she didn't know was that she just made the biggest mistake of her suburban life. She underestimated a ranch family that had survived droughts, floods, economic downturns, and every other challenge Texas could throw at them. Karen Whitfield was about to learn that some battles shouldn't be picked. The Martinez family thought they'd seen the worst of Karen Whitfield's harassment, but they were wrong. Dead wrong. Monday morning brought a new level of surveillance that made the previous week look like child's play. The drone no longer followed a predictable schedule. It appeared at random times throughout the day, sometimes hovering for hours, other times making quick reconnaissance passes before disappearing. But it was Tuesday when Karen crossed a line that changed everything. Sarah had been working with Cisco, her 3-year-old quarter horse, in the round pen when she noticed the drone positioned directly overhead. She'd grown somewhat accustomed to the mechanical buzzing, but something felt different about this flight. The drone was lower than usual, maybe 30 feet up, and its cameras seemed to be tracking her every movement with unsettling precision. She finished the training session and headed toward the house, where she could see her mother hanging clothes on the line. Rosa had always been particular about her laundry routine, taking pride in the way her sheets and towels dried crisp and fresh in the Texas sun. It was one of her simple pleasures, a peaceful moment in her busy day. The drone descended even lower, now barely 20 feet above Rosa as she bent to pick up another wet sheet from the basket. Sarah watched in horror as the device began circling her mother like a mechanical predator, its camera obviously recording her every move. "Mom," Sarah called out, but Rosa had already noticed the intrusion. She looked up at the drone with an expression of disgust and embarrassment, clutching a damp pillowcase to her chest. That evening, Sarah's worst fears were confirmed when her friend Jessica sent her a text message with a link. "OMG, is this your mom?" Someone posted this in the Millbrook Meadows group and it's going viral. The video had been edited with dramatic music and text overlays. It showed Rosa hanging laundry, but Karen had added captions like unsanitary practices and health code violations. The worst part was a slow-motion sequence where Rosa bent over the laundry basket, edited to look as unflattering as possible, with the caption reading, "Is this what we want in our community?" The video had been shared dozens of times across multiple Facebook groups, with comments ranging from cruel jokes about backwards farm people to serious discussions about property values and zoning violations. Someone had even tagged the county health department. Rosa's hands trembled as she watched the video on Sarah's phone. She made me look like some kind of... She couldn't finish the sentence. Miguel's face had gone stone-cold quiet, which anyone who knew him recognized as a dangerous sign. "This stops now," he said in a voice Sarah had rarely heard from her father. But Karen was just getting started. Wednesday brought footage of Sarah working with Cisco, edited to make it appear as if she was being rough with the horse. The video was titled "Animal Abuse at Local Ranch" and shared in equestrian groups across 3 counties. Sarah's phone began ringing with calls from concerned horse owners and even an animal control officer who'd seen the manipulated footage. Thursday's violation was the worst yet. Karen's drone had captured Miguel in a private moment, talking on his phone near the cattle pen while discussing his concerns about his father's recent cancer diagnosis with his brother in San Antonio. The audio wasn't clear in the footage, but Karen had added subtitles claiming he was plotting to hide violations from county inspectors. The emotional toll was devastating. Rosa had stopped going outside during daylight hours. Sarah found herself constantly looking up at the sky, jumping at every sound. Miguel had started carrying his rifle when he did ranch work, not because he planned to shoot down the drone. He wasn't stupid enough to discharge a firearm at aircraft, but because he felt helpless in every other way. Friday morning brought a new horror. Karen had created a YouTube channel called Ranch Watch with a compilation video titled "The Truth About Sunset Ridge Ranch." What they don't want you to see. The video was a masterpiece of deceptive editing, taking innocent moments from their daily lives and twisting them into something sinister. Their cattle drinking from the pond became contaminating local water supply. Miguel repairing a fence became destroying property boundaries. Rosa gardening became unsafe food hand-dealing. Even their dog, Chester, barking at a coyote was edited to suggest dangerous animals threatening neighborhood children. The video had over 3,000 views and dozens of comments demanding action from local authorities. Someone had shared it in the Millbrook Meadows Facebook group with a comment, "This is no movie to stop the ranch expansion before it's too late." Sarah discovered that Karen had filed formal complaints with the county zoning office, the health department, the water authority, and even the SPCA, all supported by her edited video evidence. Each complaint would require an official response, inspections, and paperwork that could cost the family thousands of dollars in legal fees. "She's not just harassing us," Sarah told her parents over a dinner none of them had much appetite for. "She's trying to destroy our livelihood." The breaking point came Saturday morning when Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification from a local news website. Someone had sent them Karen's Ranch Watch videos, and they'd published an article titled "Local Ranch Under Fire. Neighbors Raise Concerns About Health and Safety Violations." The article included quotes from concerned residents, obviously Karen and her allies, and featured several of the most damaging screenshots from the drone footage. While the reporter had attempted to present both sides, the damage was done. Anyone reading the article would assume the Martinez family was running some kind of unsafe operation. Miguel sat in his truck outside the feed store Saturday afternoon, watching longtime customers avoid eye contact. These were people he'd known for 20 years, but Karen's campaign had poisoned their opinion of his family's century-old ranch. That's when he noticed Tom Bradley, who owned the largest cattle operation in the county, walking toward his truck. "Miguel," Tom said, his weathered face serious. "I saw the videos." Miguel's heart sank. If he'd lost Tom's respect, the battle was over. "That woman's a piece of work," Tom continued, "editing footage to make your operation look bad. Every rancher in the county is talking about it. We all know what she's doing." Miguel looked up hopefully. "You do?" Tom nodded grimly. "She's trying to run you out so she can develop your land." Saw the same thing happen to the Johnson place. Started with complaints about odors and property values, ended with a subdivision. "So what do we do?" Miguel asked. Tom's smile was sharp as barbed wire. Well, I heard through the grapevine that Karen's been getting bold about where she parks that fancy SUV when she's flying her spy machine. Getting closer to your property line every day, try and get better footage. Miguel's eyes narrowed. Yeah? What's your point? Point is, Tom said, I also heard that Thunder's been mighty restless lately. Big bull like that, cooped up in the pen all the time. He might just need some exercise in the south pasture. You know, the one right along the fence line where someone might park a shiny white SUV. For the first time in weeks, Miguel Martinez smiled. Karen Whitfield's digital warfare had pushed them to the breaking point, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed the Martinez family would just take her abuse lying down. She was about to discover that when you mess with a ranch family, sometimes the bull fights back. Thunder was not your average bull. At 2,200 pounds of pure muscle and attitude, the massive Brahman Angus cross had earned his name the hard way by charging through 3 different fence repairs and once dragging a stuck cattle trailer 50 yards just because he was annoyed. Miguel had bought him from a retiring rancher who'd warned, that bull's got more personality than most people and twice the temper. Sunday morning found the Martinez family huddled around the kitchen table, planning what Sarah privately thought of as Operation Payback. Miguel had spent the night studying property surveys and fence line measurements while Rosa had been monitoring Karen's social media activity with the dedication of a military intelligence officer. She posted 15 minutes ago, Rosa announced, reading from her phone. Said she's going to get definitive proof of our violations today. Claims she has a meeting with the county commissioner Tuesday morning. Sarah looked up from the property map spread across the table. The south pasture fence runs right along the county road. If she parks on the shoulder to get drone footage of the cattle pens, she'd be maybe 10 feet from the fence line. Miguel traced the fence line with his finger. Thunder's been in the north pasture all month, having moved him south since we fixed that gate in August. He paused, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. Of course, bulls need exercise, especially big ones that have been cooped up. Dad, Sarah said carefully, what exactly are we talking about here? Miguel's expression was innocently thoughtful. Well, Thunder's always been curious about vehicles. Remember when he spent an hour investigating the UCAS truck? Driver thought he was being friendly, trying to make friends. He wasn't trying to make friends, Rosa said dryly. He was trying to establish dominance over a big brown intruder. Exactly, Miguel nodded. Thunder sees a vehicle in his territory, he considers it a challenge. Natural bull behavior. Can't help what comes naturally to a 2,200-pound animal. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This is either brilliant or completely insane. Por qué no los dos? Rosa asked with a slight smile, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her mother in weeks. The plan was elegantly simple. They would move Thunder to the south pasture, ostensibly for normal grazing rotation. When Karen inevitably showed up with her drone for another surveillance mission, Thunder would be in position to greet her. We can't make him do anything, Miguel emphasized. That would be intentional. But if Thunder happens to investigate a strange vehicle that parks too close to his pasture, well, that's just bull behavior. They spent the rest of Sunday preparing. Miguel reinforced the gate between the south pasture and the road, not to keep Thunder in, but to make sure he couldn't wander into traffic if things got too exciting. Sarah checked the fence posts and rails, ensuring they were sturdy enough to contain an agitated bull, but with enough flexibility to prevent injury. Rosa, meanwhile, had discovered something interesting in her digital reconnaissance. Karen's been posting her drone flight schedule on the neighborhood app, she announced. Says it helps residents know when she's monitoring potential violations, so they can avoid the area. She's actually telling everyone when she'll be there, Sarah asked incredulously. Gets better, Rosa continued. She posted that she'll be doing an intensive documentation session Monday at 2 p.m. to gather evidence for her meeting with the county. Says she'll be parked on County Road 47 for the best angles. Miguel checked his watch. It was Sunday evening, which meant they had less than 20 hours to get Thunder into position. Monday morning arrived gray and overcast, with the kind of humid air that made both cattle and humans irritable. Perfect weather for what they had planned. Moving Thunder was always an adventure. The massive bull had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about expressing them. It took Miguel, Sarah, and their experienced ranch hand Carlos working together to guide the enormous animal from the north pasture to the south one. Thunder seemed to sense something was different. He investigated every inch of his new territory, paying particular attention to the fence line that bordered County Road 47. He stood at the fence for several minutes, his intelligent brown eyes studying the road as if he were planning something. He knows, Sarah whispered to her father. Look at him. He's positioning himself. Thunder had indeed chosen his spot carefully. He stood in the shade of a large oak tree, about 30 feet from the fence, where he had a clear view of the road while remaining partially concealed from passing vehicles. It was perfect tactical positioning. At 1:45 p.m., Rosa texted from her lookout post in the house. "White Escalade heading your way. Drone case in back seat." Sarah and Miguel took positions in the equipment barn, where they could observe without being seen. Carlos had been sent to check fence lines in the far north pasture. Plausible deniability was crucial. Karen's white Escalade appeared exactly on schedule, slowing as it approached the area across from the south pasture. Through binoculars, Sarah could see Karen scanning the property, obviously looking for the best vantage point for her drone operation. Thunder had noticed too. The big bull's head came up, ears forward, focusing on the white vehicle with the intensity of a predator spotting prey. Karen pulled onto the road shoulder, parking exactly where they'd predicted, close enough to the fence line to get optimal drone footage, but still on public property where she couldn't be accused of trespassing. She climbed out of her SUV wearing designer jeans, expensive boots that had never seen real ranch work, and a smug expression that made Sarah's teeth clench. Karen began unpacking her drone equipment, setting up the controller and performing pre-flight checks with the confidence of someone who'd done this many times before. Thunder watched every movement with growing interest. The bull had developed strong opinions about Karen over the past weeks of surveillance, and those opinions were not favorable. Karen launched her drone, and it immediately began its familiar pattern of circling the ranch property. She stood next to her SUV, focused intently on the drone's camera feed, completely oblivious to the 2,200-pound audience member studying her from 30 feet away. That's when Thunder made his decision. The massive bull began walking toward the fence, his movement deliberate and purposeful. He wasn't charging, not yet. This was reconnaissance, the way Thunder always approached something that had caught his attention. Karen, absorbed in her drone piloting, didn't notice the approaching bull until Thunder reached the fence line directly across from her SUV. When she finally looked up from her controller, she found herself staring into the dark eyes of the largest, most intimidating bull she'd ever seen. Thunder stared back, his massive head tilted slightly as if he were studying a particularly interesting puzzle. For a moment, neither human nor bull moved. Then Karen made the mistake that would haunt her for years to come. She laughed. "Stupid cow," she said loudly, turning back to her drone controller. "Just stay on your side of the fence." Thunder's ears flattened against his head. In the barn, Miguel winced. "She just insulted him," he whispered to Sarah, "and called him a cow." Thunder snorted once, a sound like steam escaping from a locomotive. He backed up 3 steps, lowered his massive head, and looked at Karen's gleaming white SUV with the focus of a mathematician solving a complex equation. Karen, still oblivious, was maneuvering her drone for what would turn out to be her final surveillance mission of Sunset Ridge Ranch. Thunder had just decided that the fancy white intruder needed to learn some manners. And when a 2,200-pound bull makes that kind of decision, there's really only one possible outcome. The Martinez family was about to get their revenge, courtesy of the most intimidating ranch hand they'd ever employed. What happened next would be talked about in the county for years to come, shared at coffee shops and feed stores with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legendary fishing tales and tornado stories. Thunder didn't charge the fence. That would have been predictable, maybe even expected from an angry bull. Instead, he did something far more calculated and infinitely more devastating. He walked along the fence line to the gate that Miguel had carefully inspected that morning, ensuring the latch was secure but not impossible for a determined 2,200-pound animal to manipulate if he really wanted to. Karen was so focused on her drone footage that she missed Thunder's strategic repositioning. She was narrating into her phone, creating what she intended to be damning commentary for her next viral video. "As you can see, the cattle are clearly contaminating the groundwater," she was saying while her drone captured perfectly normal cows drinking from a perfectly clean pond. "And notice how close these unsanitary animals are to our residential area." Thunder studied the gate latch with the patience of an engineer. He'd opened this particular gate before, usually when he decided the grass was greener on the other side. The trick was getting the right angle with his massive head, applying pressure in just the right spot. Click. The latch gave way with a soft metallic sound that Karen didn't hear over her own voice. Thunder pushed the gate open with his shoulder and stepped onto the county road with the dignity of a king entering his throne room. Karen finally noticed something was wrong when a shadow fell across her drone controller. She looked up to find herself face to face with 2,200 pounds of irritated beef, standing maybe 6 feet away from her precious white Escalade. "Oh," she said in a very small voice. "Oh no." Thunder tilted his massive head and looked at Karen with what could only be described as contempt. Then he turned his attention to the real object of his interest, the shiny white intruder that had been parked in his territory without permission. "Nice bull," Karen whispered, backing away slowly. "Good bull. Stay." Thunder snorted, a sound that suggested he found Karen's attempt at animal psychology amusing. He approached the SUV with a measured pace of a critic examining a questionable piece of art. What happened next was both devastating and oddly gentle. Thunder didn't attack the vehicle, he investigated it. He sniffed the front bumper, apparently found it wanting, and decided the Escalade needed to be relocated to a more appropriate position. He lowered his massive head, placed it against the front of the SUV, and began to push. The Escalade, despite weighing over 5,000 pounds, was no match for a determined bull. Began sliding backward across the gravel shoulder, its emergency brake no match for Thunder's patient, persistent pressure. "Stop," Karen shrieked, though whether she was addressing Thunder or the universe in general was unclear. "That's a $60,000 vehicle." Thunder seemed to interpret this as encouragement. He adjusted his position and began pushing the SUV with more enthusiasm, guiding it away from the fence line toward what he apparently considered a more appropriate parking spot. Karen tried to get to her driver's door, but Thunder was having none of it. Every time she approached the vehicle, he would pause in his relocation project and fix her with a stare that clearly communicated, "Step away from my work area." The SUV slid another 20 feet, its tires leaving deep grooves in the gravel. Thunder paused to examine his progress, snorted with apparent satisfaction, and resumed pushing. From their hiding spot in the barn, the Martinez family watched in amazement. "He's not hurting it," Sarah whispered. "He's just moving it." "Thunder's always been particular about where things belong," Miguel replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Guessed he doesn't think Karen's SUV belongs on his road." Karen had managed to retrieve her phone and was frantically calling someone, probably 911, though the cell reception in their rural area was spotty at best. Her designer boots weren't made for running on gravel, and every few steps she'd stumble while trying to maintain a safe distance from Thunder's renovation project. The Escalade had now traveled about 50 yards from its original parking spot, with Thunder serving as the world's most effective tow truck. The bull seemed to be aiming for a particular destination, a muddy area where the county's recent road maintenance had left a collection of puddles and soft earth. "He's taking it to the mud bog," Miguel realized. "That's where he always pushes things he doesn't want in his pasture." Sure enough, Thunder guided the SUV into the soft, muddy area with the precision of a master craftsman. The vehicle's expensive tires sank into the mire with a satisfying squelch. Thunder stepped back to admire his work, then gave the SUV one final dismissive nudge that left it tilted at an awkward angle, thoroughly stuck. Karen's phone call had apparently gone through because they could hear her shrieking into the device. "A bull. A giant bull moved my car. Send the sheriff. Send animal control. Send someone." Thunder, his work apparently complete, turned and walked back toward his gate with the satisfied air of a job well done. He paused at the fence line to look back at Karen, still holding her phone and standing next to her relocated SUV like a designer-dressed island in a sea of mud. The bull's expression, if bulls could be said to have expressions, seemed to say, "Problem solved." As Thunder returned to his pasture and carefully closed the gate behind him with his nose, a trick that never failed to amaze visitors, Karen was left standing in the mud, her drone forgotten, her SUV hopelessly stuck, and her dignity in tatters. The cavalry arrived 20 minutes later in the form of Deputy Rodriguez, who took one look at the scene and began asking very pointed questions about how exactly Karen's vehicle had ended up in the middle of a mud bog. "The bull moved it," Karen insisted. "It attacked my car." Deputy Rodriguez walked around the Escalade, noting the absence of any damage, dents, or scratches. "Ma'am, if a 2,200-pound bull had attacked your vehicle, there wouldn't be much left of it. This looks more like it was relocated." "Exactly. It relocated my car without permission." "Did you have permission to park here for extended periods while operating surveillance equipment?" the deputy asked mildly. The question hung in the air like smoke from a grass fire. Karen's face went through several interesting color changes as she realized the legal implications of her admission. The tow truck that finally extracted Karen's SUV charged her $400 for the mud bog extraction. Her insurance company, after reviewing her claim, politely informed her that acts of bull were not covered under her comprehensive policy. But the real damage was to Karen's reputation. Word spread quickly through the county about the woman whose harassment campaign had literally backfired when she met her match in a bull with an attitude. The story grew with each telling, as good stories do, until Thunder became something of a local legend. Karen's complaints to the county suddenly carried less weight when officials learned she'd been conducting unauthorized surveillance operations from public roadways. Her social media campaign collapsed when people realized she'd been manipulating footage to harass a respected ranch family. The Millbrook Meadows Homeowners Association quietly asked Karen to step down as neighborhood watch coordinator after several members complained about her overly aggressive tactics. 3 months later, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's front yard. She moved back to the city where she presumably found other people to annoy with her particular brand of entitled surveillance. Thunder, meanwhile, became something of a celebrity. Tour groups began requesting to see the bull who taught Karen a lesson, and Miguel started charging $5 per photo opportunity. Thunder seemed to enjoy the attention, posing regally for pictures while maintaining the dignified air of someone who had solved an important community problem. The Martinez family's ranch remained exactly where it had been for 3 generations. Their cattle continued to graze peacefully, and Rosa could hang her laundry without fear of aerial surveillance. As for the drone that had started it all, it was found 3 days later, crashed in a tree 2 miles away, apparently abandoned when its operator realized she had bigger problems than gathering surveillance footage. Thunder had taught Karen Whitfield the most important lesson of her suburban life. Some battles shouldn't be picked, especially when your opponent weighs 2,200 pounds and has a very clear sense of justice. In the end, the bull had the last word and the last push. The end.